Welcome. I'm Cassity Kennedy, and this is Project Lookout, where we strive to bring you the hardest hitting local and international news. Today, we'll be discussing human trafficking in America and the widespread impact it has on those forced into a life of prostitution. Human trafficking is an epidemic in America, which is too little spoken of. It's one of the darkest aspects of our culture, and it's also one of the most profitable underworld ventures, grossing $36 billion in profit each year in the United States alone. Coming in second behind drug trafficking, while still slightly more profitable than arms dealing. Underground flesh trade is something that transpires all over the world, but to imagine it happening on the streets in every major city in the United States is a frightening reality. The average age of a sex trade captive is 7 to 11 years of age. These captives consist of young men and women, mostly runaways, abandoned children, lesbian, gay, bi, transgender children disowned by their families, unsuspecting bystanders snatched right off the street, drug addicts, or undocumented immigrants who have been lured into captivity by traffickers promising a new life in America, love their families couldn't spare, or whatever else may properly entice. Sex trade victims can come from any walk of life and are the most diverse demographic of victims. These unassuming offenders will use any means available to them, and their methods are many. No matter the method used, an abduction is always horrifically traumatizing for the victims involved. Many captives are forced to take hard drugs such as heroin, Xanax, and MDMA in order to keep them calm and dependent on the drug provided by their now pimp. That, coupled with being taken miles from home, physical and psychological abuse, often including being treated like an animal, to the point of locking you in a cage, closets, starving you, beating you, and forcing you to watch your fellow captives be beaten to bloody messes, having your life and the lives of your family threatened. It's a nightmare situation, and is wholly understandable why it can often be hard for them to escape this life. Even when liberated, the damage done can last for years, if not the rest of their lives. The lifespan of the average captive once they enter the sex trade is 7 years. Death usually being the result of assault, sexually transmitted infections, overdose, malnutrition, or finally, suicide. Of the 1.5 million men and women trafficked in the United States every year, 20% of those are men, 80% of them are women, and 50% of that entire number are children. There are many underlying problems to this issue that have to be addressed before we can make any progress. Prostitution being illegal, forcing the entire trade to operate in the shadows, leaves everyone involved ripe for the worst kind of exploitation. Just to start the list off: United States drug policy, the lack of availability of addiction and mental health treatment, the lack of safe options for runaways, all culminate in an apparent causality that is feeding millions of people into the meat grinder that is the United States sex trade. The internet is a very important tool for these people. Online personals, littering sites such as our beloved Craigslist, are laden with ads advertising escorts of all sorts, with little to nothing being done about it due to a variety of things such as manpower, laws out of sync with our technically motivated times, our lack of people speaking up. It's estimated that 75% of transactions for sex with underage women begin on the internet. You can literally go online right now and order an underage prostitute in slightly more time than it would take you to have a pizza delivered. It's also a lack of cultural awareness as to how big the problem is and how many forms it takes. Not all traffickers are big criminal organizations. Some are simple predators luring underage kids from abusive homes or families with promises of much needed affection, preying on their wants and needs. Homeless teens often have to engage in something called survival sex. This is for food and a place to sleep. They have no support system, no one who cares where they are. This leaves them completely vulnerable to anyone manipulating them. The use of drugs is always a large factor, no matter the manner of abduction, often keeping them in a state of constant intoxication, regularly on the verge of unconsciousness as they are sold off as cattle and raped day in and day out. This may be graphic, this may be disturbing, but I promise, if hearing it makes you cringe, then imagine what it must be like to live it every day. Now, I have personally lived this hell, thankfully, for only one night. I was lucky to survive and escape, but it's important for people to understand that this is the day-to-day existence of thousands of people who are lost and forgotten in this disgusting business. If you need a face to put, you're looking at one right now. We need to force ourselves to look at the reality of an issue that is very rarely discussed and yet is one of the most prolific and profitable criminal enterprises in the world. Not just in the United States, but in the world. One of the largest exports out of our Houston, Texas, are human beings. This must start with an open dialogue and purposefully peering into the darker aspects of our society, accepting them for what they are, then recognizing that our apathy and ignorance has proven more dangerous than any of us would like to be responsible for. If we continue to ignore this issue, then we have to accept that as a society, we have become comfortable with allowing these horrific things to happen. So we don't have to be bothered to act. So let's act. Get educated. Look at the difficult things to look at. That in itself is acting. Meet me there, and let's discuss our next step. I look forward to seeing you and your valuable input on the message boards. I'd like to thank you all for watching here at Project Lookout. As always, it is our mission to speak for those who have no other way to be heard. Please like and share our Facebook page, the Trinity River Lookout, and any donations would be more than appreciated. Please tune in next time, where we'll be discussing the recent resurgence of white supremacy.